Welcome to the Sultans of Sales podcast. I'm your host, Jamil Pendleton. Today on the show, we have a very interesting and special guest, Erin Jewell. Erin is a certified executive coach for mindset and growth, which is exceptional because those are areas that I am super interested in, which is why we're here today, which is why we connected. Erin's got a great background, experience working for companies such as Pfizer, Boston Scientific, and Medtronic, and a long history, great track record of sales and sales leadership positions at those companies. In 2015, she entered the startup world and hasn't looked back, and is now a speaker, an author, a teacher at Villanova University, all just exceptional stuff, which gives you credibility, Erin, and why the audience should listen to what you have to say, because I certainly am. So she also has an executive MBA. These are all things that I've thought about doing myself. So Erin, I don't know if there's time, but maybe there's a little time at the end of the session for that. Thank you so much, Erin, for joining us today on the Sultans of Sales. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jay. It's great to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah. And we connected on LinkedIn. I think it's been a really interesting 5 to 6 months of just content and expanding the network of ideas and reaching new people. And come to find out we're the same age. You're in Philly. I'm in Austin. Got a similar background in terms of a lot of years in med device. And so what do you draw from your days in medical device sales that you apply today to your clients?
I love that question. It's nice to be able to reflect a little bit. So a lot of my time in medical device sales, I was in the hospital. I started in the interventional radiology labs, and then eventually I ended up in the operating rooms and in cath labs and around the world, in fact. So I had some time here in Philadelphia, New York, Delaware, New Jersey. And then eventually when I moved down to Miami to work on the international side, I was helping to cover cases all throughout Latin America. So I suffice it to say, I learned a lot, and there's a lot that I apply today. And I think a lot of it has to do with how I operate on a team. Just having that collaborative spirit was so critical, right? So back in the days hey, I don't have the right size product. It's 9:30 at night on a Friday, and I got a case at 7:30 a.m. tomorrow. Can we meet, in the parking lot of Lincoln Financial Field in Philly? You're in Jersey. I'm in the suburbs of Philadelphia, right? Yep, sure, no problem. See you in a few. This is the kind of life that we led, covering cases for each other, supporting each other during cases. Hey, I want to go away for the weekend and have some time with my family. Can you be available while I do that? Inside the operating room, covering cases where, there was a mortality and morbidity rate associated with the procedures that we were involved with. So really partnering with the practitioners inside of the rooms, partnering with the clinical staff, and, making tough choices along the way, from a place of non-judgment and staying as unbiased as possible, right? Not being afraid to say, you know what, this isn't for our device. You may want to check out somebody else, and, not being afraid to turn away cases and business, also just business development, identifying opportunities for growth. All of this gets applied today. Building rapport, earning trust. These are things that are essential in the medical device sales connection, right? So as a small business owner, I find myself applying all of these things. And in fact, I think it brings even more credibility, even to individuals who have no idea what being a medical device sales rep involves. So.
Well said. And just to recap for the audience, because I'm taking notes, because this is an opportunity for me to learn from you, Erin, as well. And it's how to operate on a team, the dynamics there, the collaborative spirit, right? Working together, cross-functional teams, right? Making tough choices. And I put a star by that because I do want to come back to that one. business development, building rapport, and earning trust. And honestly, that's like a master's in relationship sales. I mean, that's essentially all those things that you outlined very well is what we do. So making tough choices, was it tough for you in 2015 to leave a world that you had documented long success, be an entrepreneur? Let's talk about that.
So yes, it was very difficult for me to leave. Medtronic was really good to me. They, time and financially supported me going back to school to get my executive MBA. They even created a whole new role to support that. The last 4 roles I held at Medtronic were all created for me. It was, they were very good to me. I had a career and I had a life there, and I wanted that for a really long time, but I did get the itch. I got the itch, right. And I got a knock on my shoulder saying, hey, we could really use your help with this healthcare startup. So it actually took me about 2.5 years to leave Medtronic. So I was originally approached in mid 2013 about the project and the opportunity. And I eventually resigned in June of 2015. And I'll never forget, I actually was just recently thinking about this. It was a Sunday morning and it was about 4 a.m. and I was living in Healdsburg, California, Northern California at the time, right near the Santa Rosa office. Sure. And I knew I was going to need to call my parents that day to tell them that I was going to be resigning from Medtronic in a couple of days. And I had already talked with a bunch of people at Medtronic and I'd made sure that I had the support I needed and, that it just felt good, right? Like I made peace with it and it wasn't like me just pulling out, and taking off. And, my parents they were pretty upset. And, I just remember my mom saying this at the end. She said, you know what, Erin, I don't know why you're doing this, but I've always known you to be successful. So I know this is something that's going to work out for you. So, let me know how I can support you. Now, this was after several minutes of a lot of other things that weren't as supportive. Like, what are you thinking? I'll never forget. I got this novel email. God bless his soul. I love this guy. He's a great human. He was one of my bosses, Matrix organization. We all have 17. He sent me this whole email on why it was a terrible idea for me to leave from like a financial perspective. Right. And I had a bunch of stuff that was vesting the following year. And I'll tell you what, I took a look at the email. I read like 3 sentences of it. I replied, I said, listen, I'm doing this thing. I appreciate it. You're awesome, but it's already, I'm in. So yeah, it was hard. I think the hardest thing about it was for like 6 months after I left, I actually went straight to Hawaii. So I met Earl Bakken just before I left. I met him in April and it took me 3 years to get an appointment with him. And all of a sudden the appointment was set in like 30 seconds. I told him the idea that I would be working on. And he said something really cool to me. We were in his trophy room and he looked at me and he said, how are you going to get this into Medtronic? It was kind of more in the wellness landscape. Right. And I just I cried the whole meeting with him. I became like kind of famous around everybody that supported, like back in the office that supported, oh, you're the girl that cried like the whole time. I cried the whole time. I was just so like, there was something so just cathartic, that whole experience. Yeah. But, I looked at him and I said, not in my hands, like it's entirely up to God. And at the time I did want to see this at Medtronic, but so I left and I moved to the Big Island for a little while. And I think the toughest part about leaving was just kind of having to reconnect with and touch base with who I was and what I really was good at. But that's like another conversation, but yeah. So, sure. Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that. And it feels like not to label things, but I mean, you haven't everything from the little bit that I've known you, at least being on your podcast a few days back, recording that. And then here we are again. You seem to be very calculating kind of everything that you do. There's intention. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. And even more than thought and intention, it seems, Erin, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like that you're really passionate and behind something 100%, right? Which is maybe why you got emotional, because this is such a big step for you to walk away from a great career. And, it's difficult to do. And I would say very few people do it, and even fewer do it successfully. kudos to you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I would say that word success is a tricky word. So it definitely took me redefining that definition for myself, what success was going to get to look like for me in order to leave the situation, the circumstances I was in, because I kind of knew at some level it was not going to look the same. And yet it was going to have to feel successful for me in order to stay in it. But yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Also though, if you don't mind, can you take that one step further? I'd love to hear more about your redefining success, or just kind of reframing, that in your walk in this new part of your career.
Yeah. So a few things. I mean, first of all, I didn't know what I didn't know when I left Medtronic. And so I can only speak for myself and my own experience, but there were, right off the bat, I was kind of hiding behind a company logo for a really long time. I worked for really good companies. It was really easy to say, like, this is like, who are you? I'm a Medtronic rep. Like, to the extent that some people would be like, I'm sorry, what's Medtronic? Like, not everybody knows Medtronic. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, all of us do in the healthcare world. But like, I so identified with that I became a Medtronic employee over time. So when I left the company, it was, I had to redefine success. I no longer was hiding behind a company logo. Well, I in fact was when I joined EMC2 No Limits. And then I'll never forget one of my coaches, when we were closing the doors on that, he said to me, it's time to stop hiding behind the name tags. It's time to stop hiding behind the logos. So my definition of success had to do a lot more, had to shift from how other people viewed me to how I was viewing myself. And although I did very well in my world at Medtronic externally, I was really struggling internally. I wasn't feeling that sense of fulfillment. I was 35, I guess, when I left, but I wasn't able to really maintain any relationships. I wasn't, my friendships were, like I was like hanging on to them by a thread. I'd pop in for a visit every once in a while. The career was going great. And, but I wasn't really getting in service the way I wanted to be. I wasn't really, I was that person. I was kind of like cutting checks instead of like making time with people and all this. Right. So there was, my definition of success, I felt like for me was pretty skewed. And it was like, I was kind of like trying to fill this hole that wasn't being filled. And that was actually leading to some unhealthy manifestations for me as well in other ways than what I've mentioned. So like, for me, the definition of success became much more about creating this internal, like temple, like this inner temple, right? So like not focusing so much on what the world looks like outside of me, but paying more attention to what the world felt like inside.
That's profound. And I feel like that's the key to growth. One of the keys to growth is understanding that it starts within, and you got to look within. You have to be comfortable in your own skin and also in your own mind. And at least that's what I've recently come across. And it unlocks growth elsewhere. I'd like to talk about LinkedIn specifically and social media. Specifically, it seems that when you mention hiding behind when you mention hiding behind a company logo or attaching yourself and your success and your brand to that logo, it seems that LinkedIn provides, for those that can, create their own storyline, their own brand, right? That's okay. Because we're all, and you and I talked about this a couple of days back, but we all have a unique story. What are your thoughts on social media in kind of that regard of telling your story and kind of trailblazing your own path as it relates to, right, that new shifted definition of success and brand for you?
Great question. And so just one, I guess not clarification, but I might come across as like anti-corporate by saying don't hide behind the company logo. I'm not anti-corporate. I'm a big fan of the workplace and organizations and the structure it brings. What I mean by hiding and what I interpreted that to mean was just get to know yourself.
Yes.
Don't identify with that solely, right? Get to know yourself in the process. So listen, whether we're business owners and entrepreneurs or whether we are aligned with an organization, we have that opportunity. So I just wanted to say that. Regarding social media and LinkedIn, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, because I'm a big fan of networking. So I've been blessed over the years to create a lot of the time positive professional connections. That has not been 100% the case. There have been unhealthy connections along the way. Some have come and go. And sometimes, there's a book I read a long time ago. It's from the 70s. I think it's called, people keep asking me for this book and I've got to find the name of it, but it's like irrational and rational emotions or something like that. And there's a statistic in the book and it says up to 50% of the people in our lives at any given point in our lives are going to disapprove of us. So like the way I envision that is whenever I do a speaker event or a group facilitation, I kind of envision that half the room is going to disagree with what I have to say. And that opens me up to showing up more and more respectfully and just thoughtfully and intentionally. I loved LinkedIn. It's done a lot for me in my career. I actually was able to play some cards and negotiate some things throughout my time, in industry because of LinkedIn, because of connections. I've been able to help friends secure positions because of LinkedIn and connections. So I personally love it. I also teach leadership I at Villanova. So I teach strategic organizational leadership. We talk a lot about the personal leadership story. And in fact, that's the final paper. It's a personal leadership philosophy. And it speaks to the legacy the leader wants to leave. It speaks to how the leader wants to show up. And all of this is made possible by the leader actually articulating their story. And I do believe that LinkedIn is a fantastic way for us to create a leadership brand, create a leadership story, and not only create it, but recalibrate it. I mean, if you look at the evolution of my own LinkedIn profile over the last several years, I mean, it has been evolving and evolving and evolving, that header and that title, so it's a really nice way. I promote LinkedIn for all of my clients and I tell them, look, get it all on LinkedIn and let that be your narrative. So you can just pull from that and tell your story.
Beautiful. And I am not here to talk about me, but I've done that exact same thing over the last 5 to 6 months. And it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful for Medtronic, for my goals at the company, but also for me. And as you just said, as we're telling that story. So what, I guess, advice would you give someone who is maybe considering going out on their own, starting a business, entrepreneur? And I'm sure people ask you that question a lot, but what's maybe a top couple things that you would say?
Yeah, it's, I guess the first thing I would say is don't tackle it all at once, figure out what the obvious next steps are, like the really, really obvious next steps, the ones that you can kind of check the boxes quickly. Our definition of what celebrating a win looks like, it will change. Like that's another thing that changes when we go from an organization to being an entrepreneur. We've got to figure out ways to celebrate those like small wins, and you're going to feel stuck in the weeds, and entrepreneurs are going to be putting out fires. And so in the beginning, when there isn't really income coming in right away, things like that, we got to get creative as entrepreneurs, and we've got to find, so like when we started EMC2 No Limits, we would celebrate all sorts of milestones. We would celebrate when we became an LLC. We celebrated when we became WeBank certified, women-owned business. We celebrated, when we had our first integrative therapist contracting role filled. We celebrated when we got our first client. We celebrate,
Sure.
You just find ways to celebrate the wins. Don't tackle it all at once. Take the obvious next steps. And this was advice I got a little later in the process for me, because I've been doing this for about 6 years now. And the advice was given about 3 years ago. And he said, Erin, he said, you cannot possibly expect to be the expert at more than maybe 2, maybe 3 things. He's like, so you enjoy creating content, you enjoy facilitating and speaking, and you enjoy coaching. All the other stuff, you're not going to be like the expert in. So what can you do to outsource? What does that look like? There's a lot of tools and resources to be very creative and cost efficient out there for people starting businesses now more than ever. Fiverr is like my Amazon for business. It's like really bad. Like I'll go on Fiverr and it's just hooked right up to that card of mine. And I'll just be like, oh, this looks great. This looks great. Like new logo, new imaging for the podcast, new workbook, new. And the next thing you know, I'm like, whoa. But, there's resources, when I first started, when we did EMC2, I was operating with the Medtronic mindset of the budget that we had. Yes. So, we hired this one person who was doing all this stuff that we could have, and it was great. Listen, it was fine. But it was like several $1,000s later when a fellow entrepreneur was like, you could get that done for like $300 on Fiverr. Yeah. And I'm like, what, Fiverr? So those are a few thoughts.
It's great. I mean, we talked about this a little bit. I'm bootstrapping a podcast right now, right? It's just all kind of on my own time and on my own dime. And it's interesting to hear you say that's after 6 years of those types of measures. So thank you for that. And I think for anyone listening, it's good to align ourselves with people that have done things that we aspire to do. I mean, that's why I reached out to you. It's awesome. And I would ask, I think maybe I want to learn a little bit more about what inspires you. You mentioned, God earlier. I think we definitely share that. But is there something that this is the canned question, but what gets you up in the morning or what keeps you up at night? That they may be different things, but what is, like, for the audience to learn? We'll probably round out with this one because we're coming up on time, but just what motivates you? Because I think your motivation for a lot of people, what motivates you?
I lost touch with what I valued when I was in the industry, and that has nothing to do with the industry and everything to do with my own personal journey or, spiritual journey or lack thereof. And I was on the journey, but I lost touch with what I valued. And so I started really feeling pulled in a lot of directions. And even though I'm like a go-getter and I'm a Kickstarter and I'm a this and I'm a that, after a certain point in time, it only gets you so far. And so I touched base with what I value. And there's a really cool exercise that we go through in class, and I can share it with you. And if anybody's interested, it's called the core values exercise, but it's really simple. You can kind of do it on your own. You write, you have a list of values, make sure that you capture any that you might want to add to this list. And you start circling, you circle 8, then you circle 5, and then you find 3. So I've done this exercise a handful of times over the last 3 or so years. And where I'm at is self-actualization, human advancement, in particular with technology, and unity. And so I value these 3 things. So the way I operate on a daily basis is, what am I doing today to feed those 3 things that I value? And what am I doing today that detracts from those 3 things? And I keep it really simple for myself. Yeah.
That's really good. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I heard some honestly recent advice from a good friend who's also running a startup. And, he recommends you write down everything that's important to you about anything, right? So if it's brand, if it's comp, about a career decision, right? If it's flexibility, if it's work-life balance, your voice, your reach, if you want to lead a team, and then score them. And then you can weight some of them. So give everything like a 1, 0, or a -1, like 1 being good, 0 being neutral, and -1 being kind of worse. And you can kind of give different weights. As I said, you can give a 2x or a 3x multiplier for those things that are really, really important. And it's almost like a pro-con list, but much, much better. Because what he found was that things that he thought were important to him were actually not. When he goes through this exercise of, should I do this or should I do that? Or should I take this step or should I not? And I think you're talking about the same thing. It just goes back to fundamentally understanding what's important to you. And as you said, what your core values are, and really whittling them down, right, to those top 3. and you're either planting seeds or you're taking away on a daily basis, right? I love that. So we're probably, I would say let's go one more question, because I do want to give you the platform for what you actually, you support a lot of women in leadership, women in business, and your podcast is as such. And I was the first male guest, which I was super excited about, to be on your show. What would you say, I guess, anything there that you'd like to share to clarify your role in the marketplace?
I appreciate you asking that. And yes, you are the first individual who identifies as male on our show, and we're really excited about that. And it was an amazing interview, and I can't wait for that to come out. And so I think what comes up right away is this: women do not have to support women. Women get to support women. So, some of the work that I do in that space is empowering women to do a pulse check on how they are showing up for themselves and other women. Are they embracing the leadership characteristics that define their femininity or not? Are they comfortable working for women and with women? If not, are they talking about it? This is kind of a pretty largely unaddressed issue. I've done some talks on bullying in the workplace and things like that. I was on NBC 10 a few weeks ago talking about this, but it's kind of this like hidden thing where women are afraid and embarrassed to say, I'm not really comfortable working with women. And in the medical device sector and in the healthcare sales sector, not so much on the pharma side, there are a lot of women out there that are surrounded by men, that are working primarily with men, working primarily with male practitioners and physicians, and female physicians are in a very similar spot with this. So where there's a lack of comfort and familiarity, collaborating with women, working alongside women, feeling safe and connected with women. And there's this simultaneous pull, like I have to be supportive of other women. The fact is we don't have to be supportive of other women, but we get to be. And if we're not feeling that way, there's something inside of us that there's an opportunity for something inside of us to shine more brightly. So I would just say, give yourself permission to touch base with that and to kind of see what shows up. And if you have any other questions or, any interest in understanding a little bit more about what I mean when I say any of this, then you can absolutely reach out.
That's awesome. Okay. I'm so glad you covered that because I definitely was curious myself. And I think that a lot of people will be. If they were going to reach out, what's the best way for people to find you? Obviously LinkedIn. Is there anything else, any sort of things we can put in the show notes of the episode?
Absolutely. I mean, the easiest place to get in touch with me and to find the resources I offer is erinjewellconsulting.com. So that's all one word, Erin Jewell, and then consulting.com. And you can find, I actually have some recorded free guided meditations. I have blogs on just about every topic. The show is there as well. You'll be able to find Jay's interview on there not too far from now. I would say in the next 2 weeks.
Awesome.
And yes. And you can also make time with me. So there's a bookings link. You can schedule a consult, virtual coffee. That's the best place to
wonderful.
go.
Just because we're going to be launching very soon. You mentioned logos. Mine's almost done. And then we're going to go to Apple, Spotify, and all that good stuff. For the people that are listening to this audibly, it's Erin Jewell, is ERINJEWELL consulting.com. Is that correct? Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome. Erin, thank you so much for coming on. This was such a special episode for me, especially having just been on your show. It's great to have that reciprocity, right? And just honestly learn a little bit more about you because you're a fascinating person. You're doing a lot of good things for the community. I would say for this healthcare or really just leadership, sales, entrepreneurs, right? And I'm so glad that I found you and good to be connected with you. Thank you for spending time with us on the Sultans of Sales podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Jay. It was a pleasure.
You bet. Thank you guys for tuning in. Tune in next week for the next episode.